Hey, folks. This is Patrick on our show Voices Less Heard, and today I've got an incredible, phenomenal guest that we're going to be speaking to. And yeah, her name is Miss Camarrah Morgan, and I know she'll share a whole lot more about herself, but a little bit of what I know. Miss Camarrah Morgan has been working in Detroit and has committed, and Detroit among different other places, but committed more than 20 years of inspiring change and working through what we call participatory authentic core design processes that hopefully improve the outcomes of young children and their families. Camarrah has been an inspirational person, not only in my own life but certainly in my professional career. She has worked in so many different organizations. Camarrah is recognized as a global leader in child development by the World Forum Foundation. She has worked to create an economic framework for early childhood development in Detroit. She has been a co-lead in starting up what is now known as the Detroit Champions for Hope network, and through that, working with various community partners to do phenomenal work. Just most recently, Camarrah was spotlighted as one of the Black people that are doing inspirational work in Detroit, and Camarrah will share more about it. But to get us started, welcome to Voices Less Heard with Dr. PMak. So I'm so excited to be speaking with you today about so many things that you have done, that you've accomplished, and really the Voices Less Heard podcast is just a platform where I get to speak to air quotes, ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things. And so by ordinary people, I just, don't see you as ordinary. You're amazing. You're an inspiration. But you don't get to be in front of the mic. You don't speak about the work that you do. You don't, yet you are doing, fantastic work. And so we're going to dive into a whole lot of questions, really just to unpack, where you get your inspiration from, what are the things that you have as a vision for the future, among many questions. But to get us started, so would you be able to fly or be invisible, Camarrah?
So I would like to fly.
Fly.
Most often, I consider myself an eagle.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to say if I was that's might be my spirit animal. I don't know. But
Okay.
I do believe that for me, um, I love the eagle because when there are storms,
Mm-hmm.
um, the eagle has an ability to lock its wings and fly
Mm-hmm.
above the storm. It's one of
Yeah.
the only birds that can fly that high. And so
Mm.
that's kind of how I view um, my life and how I see the world, including challenges in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Is like being able to say, okay, yep, that's difficult, that's challenge.
Yeah.
Now, what can we do about it? And then also just thinking about like the view from
Mm.
that level is so different than being in the middle of the
Yeah.
storm, right? You
Well, I mean, you're going all philosophical on me already. And I love it, right? That you're beginning to connect that question with the sort of various elements of your life. And so, speaking of, what is your favorite childhood memory?
um my favorite childhood memory?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Well, I have many,
Mm-hmm.
but the two that I think of the most
Yeah.
are related to family barbecues. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather and grandmother always held these big, very large barbecues in their yards
Mm-hmm.
where all of our cousins and all of their children, they had 8 children, always
Mm-hmm.
came over
Mm-hmm.
um, and we spent time and everybody was always laughing and the kids were playing and we were
Mm-hmm.
just like being a sense of community.
Okay.
And the other is very similar, except in my neighborhood where we were a very small neighborhood, just like 6 blocks, I think,
Okay.
and my friends and I would always be outside together playing double
Mm-hmm.
dutch or, Foursquare, or
Mm-hmm.
we'd have, like, a whole, like, community,
Mm-hmm.
freeze tag or dodgeball or, like,
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Uh-huh.
We were always doing it together in a big community, um, setting, and I just love that feeling of, like, people working together and being together. So those are my
So
2 favorite things.
fantastic. And many times that I speak to you, you always find a way to bring community, and you've just done that, right? So what does community mean to you?
So for me, community is a sense of belonging.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's like being seen, being part of everything that's taking place,
Mm-hmm.
enjoying the presence of
Mm-hmm.
the moment, and being
Mm-hmm.
a valued part of it. Now,
Uh-huh.
at those
Mm-hmm.
barbecues, maybe I wasn't, when I was real little, I was inside it. They had these like stretchy
Yeah.
fences that they would put
Okay.
out for the young children so they couldn't run too far. And I could not
Mm-hmm.
wait to get outside of that little stretchy fence. But I
Yeah.
also had friends, cousins who
Okay.
were
Yeah.
inside of the
Yeah.
fence, right?
Yeah. Mm.
But that kept me safe from wandering off.
Okay.
But I still felt like there was always a place because the mothers would sit their chairs around the fence so they could talk to each other and then
Yeah.
watch us play and still be
Yeah.
available for us.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's always like this sense of, um, togetherness, belonging, wisdom. So like
Mm-hmm.
multiple age groups, that's what I think about when I think about my family, like the
Okay.
grandparents, the aunts and the uncles, the teenagers, the young
Mm-hmm.
children kind of all
Mm-hmm.
together, learning and
Mm-hmm.
growing from each other, and and um and just the sense of oneness, like
Sure.
understanding that we're all connected
Mm-hmm.
in some way, regardless of what one might be experiencing, we're all there together.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Cooking, making stuff together,
Yep.
food. I mean,
Yep.
just like the whole nourishment that happens being with other people,
I love
I
it.
think to me.
I love it. Being with other people just to get the nourishment. And then think about, sort of, yeah, I mean, food and conversations. Um, was that what informed your approach to work?
Um, Now that I think about as I reflect over my life, I do believe that is part of what helped to shape how I am in
Okay.
community and who I
Mm-hmm.
am in community.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is so important. Sometimes we have to tell people like, well, you need to be authentic and you need to be
Yeah.
genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Like my grandparents, their front door was never locked.
Wow.
Like our family, we just came in, we came out, we here. We didn't ring the doorbell and wait for
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
to,
Mm.
come and let us in.
Yeah.
Their home was our home. We were at home when we were there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like everywhere I am, I try to create a space of at home.
Yeah.
So a hug is always welcome whenever I'm
Wow.
here. You don't need to ask me
Yeah. Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
hug. If you need
Yeah.
one, you can have one,
Mm.
you know,
Mm. Mm.
and trying to create that space
Okay.
of, you are welcome.
Yeah.
My door is always open.
Mm.
My chair's faced a certain way that says, welcome, come in, have a seat, speak with me.
Okay. Okay.
You know, it's so I do believe it informed it. I don't think I was intentional about making
Mm-hmm.
that connection until
Mm-hmm.
recently.
Wow. Okay. And so, having said that, I think in my intro of the work that you've done and about you, recognize that you have, over 20 years of work, certainly business acumen and leadership and early learning experiences. What made you go into this field, into the early learning field? What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, I've always wanted to be a teacher. So my
Mm.
entire life, I wanted to be an educator. I have journals from when I was like in the fourth grade, and I said I was going to be a teacher, and I was going to
Fourth
marry.
grade. Oh my
Fourth
gosh,
grade,
I don't
yeah,
even know.
and I
I
was
kept
gonna
anything
marry a
like
mailman, right? Those were the two
that.
things, two
Yeah.
people I knew that I saw
Uh-huh.
every day, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh my word.
the mailman thing didn't work out, but
I was just about to ask, how did that work out? Okay.
but I've always wanted to be an educator, and I do
Mm-hmm.
believe that it was probably wired into my, you know, genetics because my grandfather is an educator, which I
Okay.
didn't know that when I was younger, I
Yeah.
wasn't making that connection. And
Mm-hmm.
his father was, a reverend, and his father was also a reverend and taught
Okay.
people to read inside of their bar when it was illegal. So
Mm.
I think I always have come from that.
Yeah.
But I did shift a little bit in high school when we took some
Mm-hmm.
assessments because I was also very good at mathematics. And so
Okay.
um, there was recommended, a career was recommended of being an accountant or, bookkeeper or something like that instead of an
Mm-hmm.
educator. And so I explored that a little bit, but brought myself back to
Okay.
education based on being pregnant with my oldest daughter and really thinking about like curiosity
Yeah.
around like what am I going to do with this child? How am I going to help this child develop? What do I expect from her
Yep.
development?
Mm-hmm.
And so I did quit the accounting firm to work in a child care program.
Yeah.
And so that I could see their development at every age level, see what was normal, see what wasn't normal, what strategies were the teachers
Mm-hmm.
using, how could I really
Mm-hmm.
help my child be her
Mm-hmm.
best?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it kind of started.
Wow. Okay. And over the years, you've had, in various, capacities, whether you're consulting or you are leading organizations and programs, what have you seen as sort of the most impactful, or what has been the most impactful experience that you've had while working to serve young children and their
Oh, most impactful is difficult.
families?
Um, I've been really blessed to have a lot of really meaningful experiences. I think close proximity to humans
Mm-hmm.
and honoring their humanness creates a lot of beautiful experiences and lots of beautiful moments. Um, I think about like working in the classroom and watching a child achieve something for the first time, or a child who other folks have named, oh, that baby is bad, and then recognizing that they're learning extremely swiftly. So I just follow them around the classroom and show them
Mm.
everything. And they're like, yep, got it. Move to the next thing. Yep, got it. And then all of a sudden they are an active part of the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, beautiful experiences as an educator um, are equally joyful working with parents when I did community engagement
Mm.
and just seeing all that that we overcome as we're parenting and navigating the world and trying to support our children and still, volunteering every day
Yeah.
in a lot of different ways while we're trying to raise our children. Just some of
Mm-hmm.
the things that parents in Detroit were experiencing
Okay.
and
You've
still showing up in every day to volunteer. I mean, hmm, it's a really hard question.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
because I also worked in Flint during the Flint water crisis and watched the community come together swiftly and rapidly, sacrificially. Twice a week we were meeting,
Mm.
um, just like citywide to figure out like how to be responsive and what to do during this crisis. And you know,
So allow me to interject there a bit, and so to my guest,
mm,
Camarrah is talking about the Flint water crisis that happened in Detroit.
Flint.
What? Yeah, in Flint, Detroit. What was in Flint? What was your and you mentioned that bring together community, and I don't think you and I have ever spoken about this. What was your role during that period, right? What were you doing then? Were you working as a childcare leader? Were you running your consulting firm? What what was giving you the capacity to convene community during that crisis?
So I was executive director at a nonprofit organization called Child Care Network.
Okay.
We were what is called a Great Start to Quality Resource Center. In some states in the United States, it's called Child Care Resource and Referral Centers.
Okay.
So we serve 7 counties, and we basically provided the professional development for early leaders. We provided scholarships for families who needed child care, and we
Okay.
helped families find child care is what we were doing. So at that time, I wasn't leading any conversations in Flint. I was a
Okay.
partner at the table trying to be supportive of the child care programs that were serving children during that time, as well as trying to be a part of the strategy around how to help families who had young children. But it
Yeah.
was citywide convening. So everybody who was
Okay.
doing anything in the city was coming
Was
together
coming
to
together.
figure
Okay.
out like how we
How
can
do
be
you
responsive.
respond? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit.
Sure.
Did a little bit digging, and like I do for all of my guests, just trying to find out what gets them going. And so found this quote that I learned that you live by. So this is from Dr. Maya Angelou, and it says, "I've learned that people will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I heard you speak earlier on about welcoming people, making sure that your home or your office is open. There's always a space for people to sit and speak. And I know previously you've spoken to me about this concept of sawubona, right, which is a South African concept that says I see you. Talk to me more about why this is an important philosophical aspect of your life.
Um, well, first and foremost, because we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think before I do anything, I want to know how you are.
Mm-hmm.
How are you as a human being? And
Okay.
so I believe that that's part of Sawubona,
Yeah.
because I see you first before we do the work together, right? And
But
I think
yeah.
it has to happen.
Yeah, but Camarrah, like people would argue that, well, it's an individualistic, air quotes world. Like, why do you need to care about how I'm doing? I just need to meet with you. Let's do the work that we need to do, and let's get on with our lives.
Mm. The
Why is
quality
why?
of the quality of your work that you bring to the
Mm,
table is
mm,
dependent on how you're doing as a human being. And the work that I'm involved in
mm-hmm,
is so urgent, is so critical,
mm-hmm,
and it's human centered. And so if we are going to care
uh-huh,
about the conditions by which other folk are living in, and we are here to change those conditions, then we need to understand our own condition. And I
mm,
believe you can't make real change happen if you're oblivious of what your own experience and circumstance is and how that
mm-hmm.
might impact how we show up, how we treat people, and how we interact with them, or even how we're able to contribute to the solution and the change that needs to take place.
Okay. And so, how have you seen folks around you react to this notion, right? Is it like, well, Camarrah just brings in this philosophical, viewpoint of Sawubona, I see you, and the quality of the work that we're producing together is in direct relation, perhaps, to how you are, like your well-being, as you have explained.
Mm.
What have been the reactions, from folks that you've worked with using this approach? Has it been positive, or people be like, yeah, you know what, yeah, we're fine, let's just get on with the business? How has been the reaction of folks?
It's an interesting question in the way that you frame it. So first and
Mm,
foremost, um, helping people have a human experience is not something to articulate. I'm asking you how you're doing because I want you to know about Soul Bona. They don't
uh-huh.
know that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I I just am who I am, and that's how I am. So they don't know
Mm-hmm.
that it's happening. What I
Okay.
find most often is that
Mm-hmm.
people are are there's a practice in early childhood education, or like a philosophy around ensuring that children are seen and heard.
Yeah.
And what I understand is that we are all humans who have been children and all need to be seen and heard. What I
Okay.
find
Yep.
most often is that people are not seen nor heard.
Mm.
So when they come to a meeting, typically folks get right to business, and what they see and what they hear are the strategies and the designs and the work that they are trying to accomplish, and not the
Sure.
person who's actually contributing to the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pause to stop before anything. And the first thing is we all need to show up. And what I find
Yep.
is less of a reaction from the
Mm-hmm.
person around why are you doing this or what is happening. It's more of a wow, thank you. You know what? I was having a super difficult day
Yeah.
and I really needed to just share that. And now I'm even more present because I was able to just acknowledge where I am and move from that place versus where you think I should be. Or I'm so excited that all this stuff is happening in my life. I can't contain myself.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to share that. And now those people typically show up more frequently, more consistently, and are more productive. And I don't know that I'm assessing it or telling them that I'm assessing the quality of their work.
Sure.
I just know how that is.
Okay. Again, thank you for sharing that. And I love this quote that I've just written down. People are seen and not heard. Now, one would argue that, and I'm just thinking about how to frame this. Like, one would argue that, well, there are people that are seen and there are people that are heard, right? Most times, right? And can you then qualify that a little bit more? Because we live in this world where we have, and I'll name it, right? Where we have some folks that feel that they're more supreme than others, right? And they are seen and they are heard. What have been your experiences when you work and talk to folks who feel they've maybe a more powerful voice than others when you take this approach? Has it been any different, right? If they say, hey, thank you for seeing me, or it's like, okay, yeah, well, this is work. There's no room for feelings. There's no room for saying, let's get on with what we need to get on. How has it been when you're working with not racialized folks, when you're working with white folks, for example? Is that an approach that is welcome?
Okay, you have a lot of questions inside of there, Dr. PMak. So you just stacked a lot of questions. I'm trying to figure out how to respond to this. First of all, seen and not heard. I would argue sometimes people are not seen and not heard, right?
Okay.
And part of that is because each of us holds a role. So you think about as a parent, the amount of times that your child says, Mama, Daddy, Mama, Daddy, Mama, Daddy.
Yeah.
And the role supersedes sometimes who we are as a human and what our human experience is. So what you might see is my role, and you want me to show up and do my job.
Yeah.
But you do not see that my heart is broken and I'm grieving, and I am not seen or heard in that regard.
Okay.
Because I'm pushing past that to show up in the space with you.
So
in general, all human beings that I work with, regardless of their color or background or ethnicity, are show up differently when they are seen, right? As part of that experience. That's one. The second thing is when people are, when two people, when there are power dynamics and one person has power and one doesn't, the benefit, well, the research shows that the benefit, but I've also seen that there is more of a benefit for the person who shares, who does not have the power, than it is for the person who is hearing from the person who doesn't have the power. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There is a level of confidence, acknowledgement,
Okay.
appreciation for this experience that allows this person to understand that they have value in the world, even if they don't
Mm-hmm.
hold a role or position of power. I
Okay.
think that for those who do have power, who listen with the intent to hear and work in partnership
Mm-hmm.
with those who have less power in order to make real change happen, I believe that that is where the most transformational change happens,
Okay.
because um, the folks who do not traditionally have access to power or are in power have the ability to lead the change that they already possess in their bodies, to be a
Mm-hmm.
leader of change, um, or a leader of whatever their gifts and talents are. But being able to have that space activates something very beautiful for both those in power and not in power. And I'm being
Okay.
very specific because
Mm-hmm.
that is not the same case for those who are in power, who understand and acknowledge that it's important to have people who don't have power at the table, but want to
Okay.
design it, create it, and ask for feedback
Mm.
from those. That's not the same exchange,
Mm.
nor does the same
Mm.
value have it. Because what it's really saying is these are my ideas. I'm most important.
Mm-hmm.
Can you validate that this is right, or help me improve on my
Sure.
own ideas so I can get
Mm.
more credit for what I'm
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
And the
Mm.
best process, which is the
Yeah.
one that I'm a part of, where I'm currently working at the Maximum Margie S. Fisher Foundation, is where the leadership of the community is actually lifted. So not only are we listening and
Yeah.
hearing, and we're also training and supporting the leadership development and putting them out front and saying, you are the leaders, you are the ones who get credit. And not only do we see you and hear you as a human, we see the value of your role in community. We want other people to see you.
Yeah. Wow. Every time I speak with you, I get to just hear these, deep insights, not only in just, leadership and leadership development, but also insights into how, we can work, or I can work with others, right? So whether I'm in a room and I'm trying to facilitate or co-facilitate a conversation, I always appreciate sort of these insights that you bring in. So I'm gonna flip it a little bit, right? On the Voices Listed podcast, what I invite my guests to do is to speak about, I ask very spontaneous and very random questions, because I try to humanize, the leaders, right? So as I see you, a phenomenal leader, done, amazing work over the past 25 plus years. As a leader, what is the most spontaneous thing that you've ever done?
As a leader, the most
Uh-huh.
spontaneous thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Um, so as a leader, the most spontaneous thing that I've ever done was make the decision to care for myself and my family after
Uh-huh.
after COVID started
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and moved. We went to Florida for 3 months
Oh. Yeah.
and and stayed there during COVID because there was
Mm-hmm.
no, we didn't have
Mm-hmm.
to show up in person. Everybody was
Yep.
in Zoom. We were
Yep.
mandatory being inside of
Mm-hmm.
our homes.
Mm-hmm.
But what my family needed at the time was some respite for our well-being. And
Okay. Yep.
inside of that, a 3-month experience allowed me to start to unpack who I am in this
Sure.
world
Mm-hmm.
and what I need as a leader. And I'm learning now that my soul wellness is a critical
Mm-hmm.
component
Mm-hmm.
of leadership, but also
Okay.
my liberation as a human being. So my rest is my liberation.
Okay.
And I think that for me, that was the most spontaneous thing that I've ever done personally or professionally.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It's not really it wasn't a professional decision.
Okay.
but I believe that it has impacted my leadership ability and my empathy for understanding the complexity of our leaders who are
Yeah.
leading nonprofit work and really leading the work of justice, and this ability to have a balance of caring for oneself when we are everything, when we're the financial person, we're the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
organizational leader, we're the visionary, we're
Yeah.
writing the grants, we're
Yeah.
doing the programming,
You're doing
like
the HR too, right? Taking care of the human resources, right? You're doing everything.
everything, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ability to have that
Mm.
balance. So I think prior to that I was seeing the humanness in everyone else and considering myself to be superhuman, and then I needed to just keep going and kill myself because this
Yeah.
was so urgent. And now I recognize that I'm gonna now I recognize that um this is not a sprint.
Yeah.
It is not a
It's
marathon.
mm-hmm.
It is a multi-generational
Yeah.
relay
The
race.
relay race. So I love these reflections that you bring in. Out of one question, you take us on this journey of that's really, at least for me, that's illuminating. I want to go back to the earlier part of your response where you said you took some time out and went to Florida with your family, not only just to connect with yourself, but to begin to think about your role in this big space that we all occupy, that we call the world. So I'm not too sure if you got to an answer, but I'll have during that time. But what is the one thing that you came out of this process? Like, what is the one thing that you said, you know what, I'm going to do this to change the world? So during that 3-month process, when you're out there and you're reflecting on humanity and reflecting on what is the one thing that you came out of that period saying, hey, I'm going to do this to be able to change the world?
So
I'm putting you on the
um,
spot.
yes,
Uh-huh.
because it's a difficult question to answer because what came out of the 3 months for me was the need to better care for myself
Ah.
and to pour into my generation in a way, my generational offspring in a way that would allow the work to continue for my next 6 7 generations. And so
Mm.
starting to think about like how to build community and the individuals I'm working with in community in a way
Mm-hmm.
that is sustained or lives through 7 generations in the future. And so I think that that is kind of what came through for me,
Okay.
and that the main piece of that is that there is no way to do that if we don't have balance,
Mm.
and acknowledging
Mm.
my need for that and the people I'm working with, their need for that.
So essentially, you're saying that you came out of this 3-month period with a very strong, or perhaps I would say an acute awareness that in order for you to turn out better, you needed to take care of yourself first, right? That you needed to ensure that not only your perhaps physical self, but mental self and spiritual self is taken care of so that you can give back better and then create this space for 7 generations down. Is that an accurate sort of description of what you came out of it?
That's right. Right.
Okay. That's amazing because many a time as leaders we are out there, right, doing finance, doing HR, doing grant proposals writing, and doing the many things, and then forget that as you mentioned, that this is just not a sprint. It's certainly not a marathon, but I like how you framed it, that this is a relay race, that at some stage this generation has to pass on the baton to the next generation, right? So that they be able to move forward. And for you to come back with this recognition that for me to be able to pass on the baton well, I need to rest. I need to ensure that I'm mentally taken care of, I'm physically taken care of, I'm spiritually taken care of. That's That's so interesting and leads me to ask you this next question. What then, to you, is the meaning of life?
Mm.
So for those that are not watching and are listening to the audio, I can see that Camarrah is just pausing, looking into the space and thinking.
Yeah. So, a very interesting question. I believe the purpose of life is to activate our gifts and talents towards a greater good in community.
Okay.
And that means that whatever our gift is, whether that's being a scientist or a doctor or a lawyer or a nail technician, whatever it is, that it it activates our gift and talent and our passion for life in a way that helps others live their life as well. Because some people need their nails done. So
Okay. So
whatever it is.
I'm gonna keep digging here, right? So having said that, is my profession equal to my gifting? As a lawyer, does that mean that being a lawyer is my gift? As a nail technician, does that mean that that's my gift? Right? As a masseuse, does that mean that that's my gift?
If you are connected to understanding your gift and talent, it could also be a talent. So I believe that my gift is hearing and listening from people, helping them to hear each other. I believe that's a gift. It's not something I was trained on. I've been able to hone it over time through training, but it's just something I naturally know how to do. I am
And
talented.
your work is different, right? So you've got this gift.
I don't
You've
believe it. My work is not different. My
Okay.
talent is also mathematics and some other things. I mean, I'm talented in a number of things. I activate all of those so that my work does not feel like work.
Okay.
It is a combination of activating gifts and talents in a way that helps my community and others. Really, my purpose is to help other people activate their gifts and talents. So that's why I do it in the ways that I do it. But I do believe that if you're closely connected to yourself and you understand who you are, when we understand ourselves, we understand who we are, we understand our gift and talent, those are activated even in the roles that we select. There are many people who select to do roles that those things are not activated in that way. And so they might have volunteer or community service or spiritual at the church or other things where that's the only place where their gift or talent show up. Mine is not that way. Mine show up everywhere that I am, because I am living my purpose every single moment.
Okay. Thanks for giving that perspective then. So there's someone who's listening and is saying, Camarrah is talking about, gifting in this sense and talents in this sense. Do you then have to be spiritual to be able to know what your gift is, to be able to know what your talent is? Because you've just mentioned just a spiritual link. So do I need to be religious of some sort, right? And I know you and I know perhaps that there are over 4,000 religions out there, right? And so do I have to be a member of one of those for me to truly get to know what my gift is or get to know what my talent is? How for that listener that's out there that's jogging right now in Central Park or in wherever, and they're wondering, this is an interesting conversation. And so how do I identify my gifts? I'm midlife and I've been trying to figure out my life. How do I do that? How do I figure out my gift?
Patrick, you are stacking a lot of questions. Okay, so I'm going to let me start. How do I figure out
You're asking for it. You just continue to bring interesting issues to the table, right? And so I'm like,
Right.
man, got so many things to ask. So how do I
Good.
find my gift then? Okay, I'm not spiritual. How do I find my gift?
Okay. So let me go back to
Yeah,
spiritual, religious.
yeah.
I believe that spiritual and religious are two different things.
Okay, unpack
They
it for us.
can be simultaneous for some people and they can mean the same thing, but a lot of times they're different. So I
Okay,
think you can be spiritual without being religious, and
okay,
you definitely can be religious and not be spiritual.
hmm,
But sometimes you can be both.
okay,
I think it is helpful to acknowledge that there is something greater than
hmm,
ourselves
hmm,
that that allows us and enables us to be connected to all the other humans in the world. And that if
okay,
we open ourselves up to being still and quiet long enough, that we can better understand who we are and ground ourselves in who we are, but also the connectedness to not just other people, but the world, the earth, everything.
okay,
So I do believe that um s- inside of spiritual.
hmm,
So if a person wasn't spiritual or religious, having some grounding in who they are and awareness of their own selves, I think is how you figure out your gift. What
okay,
happens is that we live in a society that tells us we are supposed to be certain things. And
hmm,
when we're very young, this is the reason I love working with young children, is because young children don't know the difference. They're ready.
okay,
They're ready to explore. They're ready to go see. They're
yeah,
ready to touch
yeah,
and try. They already know. They start to taste stuff. No, I don't like that thing. I do like this thing. You know what? I really love these trucks. I don't like these other things. Maybe I love these building blocks. I like the color. I just want everywhere on the walls, on
yeah,
the floor, on everything. Right? It's a little artist. Right?
yeah,
Right from the
yeah,
beginning.
hmm,
So you I think that the purity of that is the core of who we are. And I
yeah,
learned throughout my life that the more things that happened,
hmm,
falling off a bike, experiencing homelessness, whatever it might have been in my life,
hmm, hmm,
took me further away from the core of that beauty
okay,
of who I really was. And it
hmm,
wasn't until I got older till I started to like ground myself and just be meditate and spend some time unpacking, answering questions like what, creating a vision for myself. You
hmm,
know, what is it that I really love to do? What am I good at? Asking all a series of a lot of questions that helped me to get to who I am. And when that happened, what I realized was, wait a minute, this I just came back to myself. This is who I already was. I loved to write poetry when I was a younger child. I loved to do this and I loved to do that. And I was like, this is who I already was. I would babysit for fun
hmm,
and all of this stuff. It's just like you come back to yourself. And then in
uh-huh,
that way, then you can better understand who you are and what really makes you happy and what you're passionate about. And more specifically, if I could only make one recommendation of something that you would do, I would say write the vision and make it plain, which is sit down for 45 minutes and just write. Do not let your pen come off the paper and just say today is
hmm,
6:30
hmm,
on, May 25th, 2029. I'm
hmm,
so excited because everything happened in my life the way I thought it would. And here's what I see around me, and just here's what's happening, and just let it flow out. And
hmm,
don't let the pen, I call it the hot pen, do not let the
yeah,
pen come off the paper. Don't scratch nothing off. Don't do nothing else.
uh-huh,
You got to write for the
hmm,
full 45 minutes. And at
hmm,
some point inside of there, right? Because we'll start with your head. And the
yeah.
longer you write, you're going to get to your heart. And it's going to come out what you really care and love and want to do. And
I,
that is where you unlock.
hmm. So I love this conversation, and to my listeners here, we're speaking with Miss Camarrah Morgan, who is a purpose-driven leader, an inspiring leader who has had so many amazing and tremendous accomplishments over her career. And we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, I want to talk to her about being identified and selected as one of the Black excellence leaders in Detroit, and hear about more and what that experience was like for her. And so we're going to take a minute, take a break, and we'll be back with Miss Camarrah Morgan, and leader in Detroit, doing phenomenal work. Welcome back to Voices Listed with Dr. PMak, and I'm speaking today with Ms. Camarrah Morgan, a sister, an aunt, a friend, and someone who's just been doing amazing work out in Detroit and Michigan. And so during the break, we were having an interesting conversation about life and perspectives. And I'm wondering, Miss Morgan, right? You did, speak with us earlier on about, being in Florida and how that time was helpful for you to connect with yourself and, be at rest and really, establish how you could sort of, move the world forward and what your place and your role in that was. During the break, and I'm bringing this back in so that our listeners can hear this for themselves. You say that you've never been a selfish person, but when you went out to Florida, you found yourself thinking more about you and taking care of yourself and just being, air quotes, being selfish. And that was transformational for you. Can you explain how that was transformational and why that was transformational?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, I've always been a giver. I'm the oldest child and to my mother and father. And so I've always contributed to caring for my younger siblings and trying to watch out for them and sharing with them. I have 4 beautiful children that I gave birth to, 5 bonus children. I've always just been a caregiver. I was even talking with my sorority sisters last weekend, and they were like, you know what, you were like the old lady in the group. Like you were always caring and operating like everybody's
taking
mother.
care of everyone around you. Yep.
Right. And so when that 3-month period, us being, 3 islands away from the mainland and still working 14 hours, 16 hours a day because it was COVID and there was just a lot that was happening in the world. But being able to sit on the beach and just watch the sunset every day. I think what it helped me to realize was, one, in order for me to achieve my goals, which one of my goals is to be the 95-year-old great-grandmother sitting on the porch with all the grandchildren and everybody coming up and leaving back and forth. How am I going to make it that far if I run myself into the ground right now? Right? But what I also recognize is that caring for yourself is not selfish. People will say it's selfish to think about yourself or to focus on yourself. Sure. But what I was saying to you is that that started a journey. That was November of 2020 through February of 2021. March, actually through March. But anyway, I am still on a learning journey of myself. What I need, what does my body need? How do I respond? How do I care for myself? Am I actually loving myself by caring for other people more than I care about myself? Am I pouring from an empty cup or am I overflowing love? And am I showing up? I just talked to you about how I support people and I see them so that they can show up and be their best self. And yet I am not my best self because I'm empty every time I show up.
So let me pause you there then. How then do you counter-argue the notion that the world is an individualistic place? In fact, let me refine that even further to say that the Western Hemisphere or the Western world. So I come from Zimbabwe, originally from, Zimbabwe. I'm living in Canada, and I grew up in a communal system. And by communal system, I meant that I was everyone's child, right? That there was community. It is, in a true sense, the community that raised me. And then I moved to this side of the world where it's almost like, well, each person to themselves, etc., etc. how would you then counter argue to say, well, Camarrah, the community notion burns you out? Right? So you have to take care of self first before you go out there and take care of community. And yet, when I introduced you as a community-centered leader and individual who's contributed so much, over 2.5 decades of contributions to community. Someone listening to this will be like, well, you know what? This is why I'm selfish. This is why I take care of myself and not community, right? Where's the balance? Where is the balance between taking care of community and taking care of self?
So, two things. First, I think I would like to just kind of re-articulate what I'm really saying, which is in order for me to properly care and contribute to community, I need to pour from a cup that's full and not empty.
I love that.
So, I did not say that the community is draining me and that it's not worth it. I didn't say that. I said I am running on E and still working full. So as I think about your question around community, what's happening is because I was not sharing the load, because I'm doing everything myself. I'm taking care of these children. I'm responsible for my bills. I'm leading. I'm doing the finances, the HR, the grant writing, blah, blah, blah. I was not sharing the load. And what I've learned in that time is that in order to care for myself, there are other capable people who are also activating their gifts and talents and their passions and their purpose, who are waiting to help so that we can do it as a community together. And so how that has changed me is now I'm in the process. So for the Detroit Champions for Hope, which is one of the organizations you mentioned when you introduced me, I was doing all of those things. And now I'm training other team members to write the grants. I'm training them on how to analyze the data. I'm supporting a different leader rather than me being the leader, the executive director, to now lead the work and trusting that they can do the work rather than hovering over and trying to make sure that it's happening the way that I want it to happen. So actually what helps me to take care of myself is actually to be more a part of the community in doing the work and also supporting other folks in the community who need to receive what the work is giving. If you understand what I'm saying. So actually I created a greater community in order to do the work.
Okay. No, I do understand that. And I can just then make a correlation to what you mentioned earlier on, and which I think is really profound example, not only for me, but to our listeners too, I hope. This notion that this life that we're living is not so much a sprint, is not so much a marathon, right? Because before this conversation, I was like, yeah, it's a marathon. I need to pace myself, right? And then this conversation, you are teaching me that, well, Patrick, it's not a marathon. It's a relay race, right? You got to be able to think about how are you passing on the baton. And so this is what you're bringing in right now, right? To say, hey, I'm beginning to raise other leaders around me, right? Giving them the skills and the resources perhaps, but I can imagine, Camarrah, are you also helping them to discover their talents, their gifts?
Yes, absolutely. Because that's part of, I think, what makes it so beautiful. And I just want to go back to your point around like sharing the load now actually helps to build the leaders of the future to pass the baton to. But just think about it visually. If you are in a field that is not, it's just overgrown and you're trying to figure out how to create this pathway because there's something over here that you see that you believe is there and you need to get to it. You're cutting down, you're moving, you're trying to create a space. If you allow these other people in, the clearing that you all create is much larger. And when you're tired and you're done, you pass it. They lock back in and they keep moving and they create space for more people that will actually help the clearing to be larger. So not only am I working really hard to ensure that other people understand their gifts and talents so that they can be whoever they are designed to be and live in that
Mm-hmm.
every day, but that they understand what it looks like to
Mm-hmm.
show other people how to do that and how to share. Because what also happens is if I hoard everything, which is what I was doing,
Yeah.
they're hoarding everything. And it's the
So
opposite. So it's like not caring
yeah.
for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird. Not caring for myself caused me to be selfish in the work.
Okay.
And caring for myself allows me to not be selfish in the work, which somebody would call it selfish to care for yourself.
Sure.
But it's kind of weird. It's kind of strange how that happens.
Okay. So let's turn up the ante a little bit. And in so many ways we've been doing it, right? So and so we are racialized folks, right? I'm black, you're black. How much of this do you feel is a generational struggle that you have been fighting? How much of that, like, when you talk about, carrying the load and, taking care of everyone, and being everything for everyone, how much of that is a generational load, and how you've spoken a little bit about how you're shifting that? In fact, let me pause with that one question, because you're saying I'm asking too many questions. I'm firing all way. How much of all of this is a generational struggle for you?
Yeah. I would say in general for me and for I believe our people,
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why I said rest is liberation.
Hmm.
Because it's part of our liberation is to understand that there is balance, that we don't work ourselves to death. I heard
Mm-hmm.
a young lady
Mm-hmm.
who is retired. She
Mm-hmm.
spoke at a conference that I was at last week, and she said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm retired and I'm working more now than I was previously.
Hmm.
But when I was raised, you were looked down upon if you weren't tired from your workday. So if you weren't
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
exhausted from the workday,
Yeah.
you
Then you're
have
doing.
not worked. You have
Yeah.
not worked if you're not
Oh man.
exhausted.
Yeah. I hear
And
you. Yep.
so, yes,
Mm.
absolutely. And we know that in America,
Mm.
that literally people were working to death when they were
Yeah. Yeah.
slaves, and they would
Yeah.
just be
Yeah.
pushed over into a grave, and then they would
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
other folks would have to keep on working. Like
Mm-hmm.
literally, they were working themselves to death.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
is in our genetic code, I believe, from our ancestors who
Mm-hmm.
gift us with many blessings inside of our bodies and in our
Mm-hmm.
minds,
Yeah.
that we also have some of that. And
Yeah.
so the liberation um, of freedom, first comes from a physical body being free, or by the law saying, of course, acknowledging you are a human being and you're free, which we already were human before that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
But then also us understanding, wait a minute, I am free. So my behavior can change. And it doesn't need to I don't still need to respond as if I were in that previous
Okay.
state.
So this is why when I speak with Miss Camarrah Morgan, it's always sort of philosophical and trying to get a whole lot of pieces figured out. Now, you talk about liberation, and I can just keep sitting in my seat because it's getting hot for me. So you've been on this pathway of getting this self-liberation from the work. But how do our people get economically liberated, right? Because there's this, I'm trying to draw a causal link between the hard work that you mentioned that this young lady was talking about, that prior to her retirement, hard work and getting tired, etc., was seen as, you're actually working and you're doing, something. There's a correlation there with the economic well-being of our people. So if you then use rest is resistance, how do we advance our economic well-being? Because, well, let me not even mitigate that. How do we do that? How do we advance ourselves economically when we are taking time to rest and not taking time to improve our economic well-being? Where's the balance?
Mm. There are systems and structures that are in place that still need to be dismantled to
Mm-hmm.
create space for our economic well-being,
Mm.
which is why I'm on the advocacy side of the work, the systems change side,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
because those structures, as you mentioned, do keep people who look like you and I in a consistent cycle of
Mm-hmm.
underpayment for the work that we do that has equal value to others doing similar work
Mm-hmm.
or lesser work in other places,
Mm-hmm.
space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that's first is the system change that needs to happen because there's some of it that we can't do. But what I
Mm-hmm.
do know, and what I think is beautiful about our history, our collective history, is, I talked about my grandparents and being at
Mm-hmm.
their home and the joy and the beauty and all the love and excitement that we had. We were all poor.
Mm.
And I didn't mention that when I described it
No.
because the experience, the human experience of love and joy and community,
Mm-hmm.
belonging does not have an economic value,
Yeah.
especially in this Western world,
No,
right?
doesn't.
Right.
Right. And this
And
is why I'm
so,
asking, like, where's the balance? Like, how do we become economically liberated if we don't have?
and first and foremost, I believe that that is our first value, which is why I said I'm trying to change my behaviors so that my
Mm-hmm.
future generations can live a more balanced
Mm.
life in experiencing the economics of joy, but also fighting for the economics to be able to create, to have the space to live the way that we deserve to live. I don't have a full answer for, you know, the economics of it as we think about financial resources for our people because there is so much disparity. But what I do know is that we have higher rates of um, living up to 20 years less than
Mm-hmm.
other folks of other races who have
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
same live in the same cities doing the same work and the jobs as us because we're working very hard, we're working twice as hard. We're taught that. I was taught
Yeah.
that. I was taught you
Yeah.
have to work twice as hard in order to be
Mm-hmm.
recognized as equal
Mm-hmm.
for someone else. And so I'm
It's
working,
true.
I'm living into that. I'm living into
Yeah.
working twice as hard, which
Mm-hmm.
means I'm going to die 20 years earlier than somebody
Yeah.
else if I continue at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
pace. Our bodies can't manage at that rate. So
Mm.
I have to create my own economic value for the time that I spend with my family, for sitting and looking at the tree outside, for
Yeah.
watching a sunset, that value is more is worth more
Mm.
than me working 15 hours a day. And that's what I learned in Florida.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you, and tell me if I'm hearing the wrong thing here, though, is that the focus now should be less on the quantifiable metrics in terms of what, or quantifiable dollar figure of what working brings to me. Instead, I should quantify peace, joy, happiness, well being in the short, medium to long term, as opposed to the money, right? Because growing up, we'll be told, work hard for you to succeed. You have to, you'll be recognized if you make money, you'll be recognized if you're well off, financially. Are you suggesting then that our folks, people that look like you and me, should perhaps begin to have this paradigm shift of happiness and well-being is not so much in the money that you attain? Having it is great, fantastic, it opens so many doors, but you live longer if you focus on sitting on the porch or sitting on the patio and enjoying the beauty of nature, taking long walks, taking care of yourself. The 3 months that you spent out in Florida. Is that, are you suggesting a shift in how we approach this life? Because life is hard, right? For racialized folks, it's difficult. Like
It's
every single day you're
really
on the treadmill, right? Is that am I hearing you right? Is that the suggestion coming through? And I love it, right? I love the fact that you can begin to sort of shift, right? To say, hey, it's not just about money. Money is important. Yeah. Economic, advancement is important. Yeah. But you scare me though, Camarrah. Live 20 years less compared to the other race or compared to the other folks. I want to live longer. Right. So I'll forgo the money, right? And go for the rest, whatever that looks like for listeners, or whatever that looks like even for racialized folks. Is that a correct picture of what you're advocating for?
I would say that your assessment is moving in the right direction of what I'm saying, because I do think it is important for us to have increased value of our own self and our own experience and our joy. And it can't be just that. It is not enough that we wake up, go to work until we're dog tired, go to sleep, and wake up and do it again. There is so much more to life. So there needs to be a value in the enjoyment part of the life, that you are resting to work, to have the energy to work, and then also working to enjoy your life, not just the grind. And recognizing that the more that we are closer to ourselves and our passion and our gifts and our talents and doing the work that we love, it will not feel like work. And it also is more enjoyable. That also helps us to be more effective in the work that we do in a time that is available for us to do and that we might be paid for, which I do believe that the blessings chase after you when you are doing what it is that you are called to do. And I also need to recognize and honor that there are so many of our people who don't have that opportunity.
That's true.
Because the systems and the barriers, the educational quality, the employment circumstances in their community, even the housing situations do not make it enjoyable to live and make it difficult to find the aspects of joy that might be available to them. So I think it's important for me to acknowledge that it can't be, it's not that readily available for everyone. But there are ways, I think, to get closer to it. Like I said, my grandparents, we were all poor. And I actually learned when I got to college that I actually lived in extreme poverty when I was growing up. And I knew that we were poor, but I think my experience with my family was so beautiful that outweighed what we were experiencing financially, which also helped me to see the world differently, which is why I'm able to see myself as an eagle. It's just how I approach
because you can
the
fly,
world.
you can, as an ego, you're flying above the circumstances that, that were then you're able to see, right?
And my mom probably didn't experience the world that way. But again, this is also the reason why we're living for our future generations, because now she can live that through me.
Wow.
Right?
So you have all of these things that you process all the time. I'm going to shift it down a bit.
Okay.
What's your favorite hobby and why?
Hobby? I love to journal.
That's work. That's work. Is that a hobby?
It is a
Writing.
hobby. I love to think about like what happened during my day, what I've experienced, and really reflect on like what am I learning and what am I learning about people, about the way we interact with each other, around the way people respond. Like it's my wisdom documentary.
Oh my gosh,
So
you
I
all,
just
you
love
all. She just is a
document.
serious. She's just okay. What do you do for fun then?
Oh, I love to watch sunsets and water. I'm a water baby. So I love to, I could just listen to the waves at the beach all day long. You know, I don't even know if I get in as much. You know, like some people like to be in it. I just love to listen to it. So calming, and the sunset is like my jam. So
Okay.
spending time with my family, playing games with my family is also a hobby.
That brings you joy.
It brings me a lot of joy and laughter, which is healing for your body. So
that's awesome. And so one last question, as we get to the end of our conversation here. What do you think the future of humanity looks like?
Patrick, I consider myself a modern day abolitionist, right? I'm working so hard to free the minds and the bodies of my people, right?
Okay.
From restraint, from all these arbitrary restraints and limitations that have been put upon us. And I believe and I can see the evolution of our people. And I see many examples and places where people of all types of backgrounds and ethnicities and cultures live together in beautiful harmony and enjoy their life together, right? Without harm or judgment or fear that somebody else created that's not real. And I do hope and pray for that, for our future.
Yeah.
What I have an underlying current of concern about is the way historical harms shapeshift
Yep.
to maintain that old thinking.
Sure. Yep.
And that's difficult for me. But I think that the best way to alleviate that is for us to be liberated one mind at a time. And that includes the joy that we have inside of us. Nobody can take that away.
Yeah.
It's the one thing, that I love about our history. It's like even when people were being worked to death as slaves, God rest their souls, they would work all day and work until sun up, sundown, and they would find time to dance in the woods
and sing,
find themselves and sing and enjoy and have a good time with each other, and still figured out ways to love and care and get married, even with atrocious stuff that was happening to their bodies. And I believe that is the key.
Yeah. Well, I still have to get you back on this show, on this conversation. We haven't spoken about Black excellence and the leadership documentary that you're featured in. There are so many things that I haven't touched on today, but Miss Camarrah Morgan, a global leader in the early childhood space, a phenomenal human being. Thank you so much for coming on Voice.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Look forward to having
grateful
you
for
again.
those who are listening and for those who are on their journey to doing whatever they're called to do. May the wind be in your sails as you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Voices Listed podcast with Dr. PMak. I hope you enjoyed insights that came out of this conversation. Keep your notifications on. Our next episode will be dropping soon. Thank you and enjoy.